A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles, Director of Partnerships here at Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Jeff Winters. He is the President of Sapper Consulting. Jeff, how you doing today, man?
I'm great, Logan. Hey, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Big fan.
Really excited to dive into your 3 keys to shorten your sales cycles today, Jeff. Before we do that, tell us a little bit about why you're the guy sharing on this topic today, a little bit about you and what you and the team at Sapper Consulting are up to these days.
Yeah, so I started Sapper about 5 years ago. And just prior to this, I was an AE at a software company in St. Louis. And I was brought on to sell the software to literally chief human resources officers at Fortune 1000 companies. And there was only one small problem. It was that the software, it was kind of in beta and really hadn't been sold to anybody yet. But nonetheless, I was going to make my cold calls and get my meetings and sell the software to these chief human resources officers, these huge companies. Mm-hmm. And I started making these calls and nothing. I mean, I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And so as a last ditch effort, I started waking up at 2:30 in the morning and sending what I thought were funny emails. And look, I got like 150 meetings in a year, and I'm flying all over the country to the biggest companies in the world. And all these meetings are going the same way. They're saying, Jeff, thanks for coming. Excited to see the software. But how the heck did you get this meeting? Because I got to tell you, we got your email, but we, sort of folks like us don't meet with folks like you. We never really sort of heard of the software or whatever. And so after this happens 150 times, I'm thinking, you know what? I can do this for anybody. I quit. And so fast forward 5 years, Sapper Consulting got nearly 500 clients, 253rd fastest growing private company in the U.S., featured in Harvard Business Review and Forbes and Inc. and on and on and on. And what we do is really simple. We help our clients get great sales meetings. And we're doing it almost entirely through email or coaching them how to use email. And that's the business.
I love it, man. Well, that is a great story. I love that. Hey, Jeff, don't take this the wrong way, but we don't normally meet with guys like you.
Yeah, kind of jarring and a little surprising, but at the same time, flattering.
Yeah, exactly. So taking the positive out of that, I love how you looked at that. All right, well, let's dive in, Jeff. Let's talk about your 3 keys to shorten your B2B sales cycles. And it starts with getting the right leads, getting hotter leads. Tell us a little bit about this.
So overall, let me give you my theory. My theory is that we've got to create the environment where a deal can close quickly, right? It's like, think about it like a good tornado, to the extent you can have a good tornado. Not like a good tornado, like tornadoes are good, but think about it that way. That's the analogy. It's like the conditions are right. You got the updraft and the backdraft and the rain and the hail, and the tornado may not form, but at least the conditions are perfect. And that's what we need to do as teams. We've got to create the conditions for sales to close quickly and to increase our sales cycle. And so the first idea is we got to get hotter leads, right? And so how do we get hotter leads? And I recently heard the CEO, Marketo, say that buyers are looking not at 4. 4 was the number, right? People would look at 4 pieces of research before they bought your stuff. Now they're looking at 6, okay? And so what's that telling us? It's telling us that we've got 6 opportunities at least to get buyers further on the buying journey before they ever talk to us. So we got to create really good visceral content that speaks to buyers, right? And what's that form? What's the form of that content? Well, certainly it's on our websites, right? Having the logos on the websites, critical. Using PR. How can we have really good quality thought leadership and PR to let our prospects know that when they're talking to us, they're going to be talking to someone who's selling something that's really credible, that works really well, and that's got really good third party sort of justification behind it, if you will.
Right.
And then last, the website, right? The website's got to be so jargon proof. We can have no jargon on that website because the creation, the conditions we're trying to create, this good tornado, if you will, is the buyer gets on the call. They know exactly what we do. They know others have used it. It's credible, and I'm ready to have a buying conversation, or at least a sort of a preliminary buying conversation. And that's the key to me to sort of starting to create these hotter leads.
I love it. To the effect you can have a good tornado, and having lived in Tornado Alley before, I think this is the only time that you want a good tornado. I love that analogy though, Jeff. So let's talk about the next step from there. You secure these meetings that you don't think you should be in, or maybe the customer doesn't think you should be in, to go back to your story. Tell us a little bit about what you've tested and tried, or you've seen from other folks in executing the perfect discovery call from there, because as we were chatting offline, you mentioned this is one of your keys to shorten your sales cycle, right?
Yeah. And Logan, I think here salespeople are sabotaging themselves. I really do. I think that your preconceived notion of what a discovery call is artificially elongates your sales cycle. So I saw some research by HubSpot. 60% of buyers want pricing on their first call, and 50% want to see the product or service on the first call. I mean, to me, that is great. That's what we want. I want to talk pricing on that first call. I want to show my product or service on the first call, because otherwise, if you don't, you're artificially creating this next call. So to me, the discovery call is a little bit of a misnomer, right? Yes, we want it. We want to make sure we're uncovering pain, making sure there's a fit. But to me, there's two things you absolutely have to do on that discovery call, right? And the first is you got to drop what we call some credibility darts, okay? We call them credibility darts because, and explain what they are. And it's kind of a hokey thing, but folks will remember it. So a credibility dart is a piece of information that is really relevant to the prospect's business that you couldn't know unless you really knew their business or industry, right? And you got to drop it at the perfect time. And so I think there's this misnomer that up front, you got to, on a discovery call, you got to establish credibility and establish rapport. Forget that. I don't agree, right? To me, you establish credibility throughout the call, and you do it in a nuanced, finessed way, okay? So that's number one. And then number two, you got to get into pricing earlier rather than later in the call. Because if you don't, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and no one's making any decision or even thinking about making that next decision until you get to pricing. And so as we wait all the way into the first call, or we wait into the second or third call, you're artificially elongating the sales cycle, and there's no reason for it. You got to get pricing out, and the prospects want it based on the research. So tell them.
Today's growth story is about one of the world's largest cloud cybersecurity firms. Their challenge? To build and execute a global demand generation strategy. Fortunately, this firm tackled their challenge by joining forces with a marketing partner that delivered a dynamic display campaign that was aligned to the sales and marketing efforts of target accounts. The results? The cybersecurity firm saw a 120% increase in their global display click-through rate. And here's the big one. They generated $39 in their pipeline for every $1 spent on predictive display. So what kind of partner can deliver these results? MRP Prolytics. MRP Prolytics is an insights-powered account-based marketing platform with streaming predictive analytics baked into its core. Integrating multi-channel ABM execution on these insights, MRP Prolytics triggers display, email, direct mail, and global inside sales in real time, helping the largest marketing departments in the world deliver the right message to their customers at just the right time. Can MRP Prolytics get similar results for you? Probably. Find out by visiting mrpfd.com or click the link in the episode description of this interview. All right, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I saw a great piece of content from Gong. As usual, they're the call recording software that helps you analyze. They've just been analyzing millions and millions of sales calls. I love what they're doing. And they were talking about, clients no longer want this, hey, I'm going to discover, I'm going to probe for pain. I'm going to find out your initiatives, and then we're going to set another call where I'm going to sell to those initiatives. And this, this 1-2 punch that historically has happened in sales, clients want something more conversational, which, one, to your point, I think we need to adjust to that. And two, it's a more natural flow of the conversation. And as I've seen research as well, you've probably seen this too, Jeff, that your top reps spend fewer words talking about pricing. They don't wait till the end of the call and say, well, here's the pricing, but we could do this and we could do that and maybe this, maybe that. They deliver the pricing in a natural flow of the conversation. And to your point, when they do that earlier, then you can find out earlier in the sales cycle that hey, this just isn't a fit. It doesn't matter how much value I build. This client just doesn't have budget for what I'm trying to sell, right?
You're exactly right. And Gong has put out some tremendous research, and I think opened the eyes of many of us to what top reps are doing on these calls. And your point is it's a perfect one. There's prospects and buyers are too smart. We all have been on enough sales calls now, or heard enough sales calls where here's what we're going to do. I'm going to uncover a need, and then I'm going to sell into that need. It's just transparent and it's hokey and it doesn't work. We've got to be genuine, right? And if we're genuine, you're not doing that. And so to me, it's about, and I think I'm not the first to say this, but you're having a real conversation with a real human and you're trying to figure out if this thing is a fit or not. And if it is, great. And if it's not, that's okay too. But right. Nobody is going to say something is a fit or it isn't a fit, or you're going to have a 5-call sales cycle without talking about price, only to find out they don't have budget. Silliness.
Yeah.
So we can do better.
Yeah, we can do better, and it's better for us, and it's better for buyers as well. So let's move on from there. So we've talked about, the factors in this perfect tornado to shorten your sales cycle of getting the right leads, the right people, handling that first call well with some of the nuances we're talking about. And then the third thing I know you wanted to share, Jeff, is pre-planning your follow-up progression. Tell us a little bit about where you've seen success in this area.
Yeah, let me start by saying where I've seen failure. How about that? Where I've seen failure is the sales reps that I've seen, the AEs that I've seen, craning over follow-up emails as though a follow-up email is going to save a bad call. The analogy I use is like, there's no great text that's going to save a bad date. You know what I mean? If you had a bad date, there's no great text that you could send that's going to clean up those last 2 hours of this awkward date. Similarly, there's no amazing follow-up that's going to save a bad sales call. And I think that people spend so much time craning over the perfect follow-up email. And I've never understood it. So to me, spend that time on the front end. Spend that time prepping for your sales call, developing your credibility darts, being knowledgeable about your prospect's business and industry, and not on finessing the perfect email. And so, or the perfect follow-up email. And so to me, let's make sure that we have a follow-up email process using whatever tool in our sales tech stack makes the most sense, and say, hey, if our prospect says these, is in this sort of interest bucket, let's take them on this track. And if they don't respond in a certain period of time, then we'll put them, through this sequence. And to me, let's take all the time and resources and energy and training out of that follow-up email sequence, automate it so we're taking less time, it's more predictable, and let's realize we're not going to save a bad sales call with a great follow-up sequence. But what we can do is we can take a good sales call and artificially extend the sales cycle by taking too much time craning and drafting and thinking about follow-ups. Let's have it ready. Let's send it when we're supposed to. And let's make sure we're moving that sales process along as quickly as makes sense, given our, company and product or service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Jeff, in how you tailor those follow-ups? Like, should they be more personalized depending on, the closer you get to the end of the deal, or the higher interest level, or the more the account kind of fits your ICP and it's, a big deal? Or do you find that it really kind of throw all that out and it's really not about the follow-up sequences in any way? Do you feel like there's some layering in kind of tiering out those follow-ups? Or is it, like you said, depending on the interest level, just have your different tracks ready and send them down, whichever one kind of makes sense?
Yeah, maybe I'm taking a contrarian point of view on this. I think it matters almost none. I really do. I mean, look, I'm not saying you should be firing off tons of random, overly general follow-up emails. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying if you and I talked about baseball on the call, do you need to reference that and you need to remember my kids' names? No, not at all. The deals are won on the call or in the room or mm-hmm. not at all. And to me, wasting any time, beyond sort of reviewing the parameters of what you discussed and what you agreed to and what the next steps are, to me, it's just it's wasted time.
Yeah, I think you bring it home to a good point there, Jeff, even though maybe it's contrary and people would take a different stance, bringing it back to the next steps. I heard Chris Orlov from Gong talking about this on another podcast recently. And as we both talked about, they've got a ton of great research out there. And again, what they've seen great reps do is talk about next steps earlier. And to your point, they indicated that the more minutes on the call that were spent talking about next steps led to greater success. I don't know if they analyzed any follow-up emails, but that kind of reiterates your point that it does come back to the call. The follow-up email is a nudge. It's needed, but it's not going to, a great text isn't going to save a bad date, to go back to the perfect analogy I think you dropped earlier in the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's right. And look, I'm going to make a different point based on the research that you just shared. And look, they're a whole lot smarter than I am over there. But, to me, and maybe it's a difference without a distinction, but to me, if I'm there's a big difference between me as a sales rep or an AE pushing for next steps when next steps are not on the mind of the prospect versus the prospect bringing up the next steps. I mean, that to me is what we should be angling for. There should be a lot of discussion about next steps, but I don't think it should be sales rep initiated. Like the great salespeople that I've seen, the prospects are suggesting the next steps way before the sales reps are. To me, it's akin to, not to overly analogize this podcast, but I mean, to me, it's like the boulder rolling down the hill. Like you're not going to get momentum getting the boulder to roll down the hill by suggesting this very strict timeline for follow-up. No, that's got to be rolling through the sales call. You got to have created that inertia already so that it's rolling so fast down the hill by the end of the call that your prospect's saying, hey, what are next steps? What do we do next? And now what? When can we get a proposal? That to me is the discussion that should be had. And things are headed in the right direction. Not it's stale, it's awkward. The prospect is responding in one or two sentence, fragments or one or two word statements. Yes, no. And then you're saying, well, great, let's follow up next week. What time do you have available on Wednesday? And they go, well, I'm a little busy Wednesday. What about Thursday? That to me is not right. It's about how can we get the prospect telling us what the next steps are.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Jeff, this has been a great conversation. I feel like I could have this conversation on sales cycles all day long with you. I think you bring some good wisdom there. Obviously, you've had some great successes. Great to hear about the growth of your company. If anybody, to that note, would like to reach out, stay connected with you, ask any follow-up questions, argue with you that they take a different stance, whatever the case might be, what's the best way for them to follow up with you, man?
Website, sapperconsulting.com, at SapperUSA on Twitter, and email me direct for arguments, for sure. Jeff.winters@sapperconsulting.com.
I love it. Jeff, this has been a great conversation. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Hey, Logan, thanks.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.